Welcome to Chief Speaks. Welcome everyone listening live. Everyone coming in from, iTunes, Mixcloud, wherever. And, another new acknowledgement and shout out I want to give to those who tune in on Mondays, because that seems to be the hot day. I think what happens is, people are probably enjoying their Sundays or doing other things. And they catch up to the Chief Speaks shows on Mondays, because I'm finding on Monday is when we have a spike. When I look at the stats, there's a spike of listens on Mondays. So, let me give you an extra shout out, like I said, to all of my Monday, listeners, those who are tuning into Chief Speaks in order to get through their strong, most likely, or, just to give them some motivation for the next step, for what happens next. So, I want to welcome everyone. Of course, I am Chief Yuya, and this is an experience that we do every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we pretty much go through a series of topics and teaching, and I guess you could say it's almost a very long lecture series in some senses, but we do this in order to break out, break free, get down to the vibes we need to get to, and then get up to the vibes we need to get to. All right. And also this experience is really an addendum type experience for those who are keen on the Anu Life Global Ministry. And again, I want to reiterate that ministry, please don't make an immediate association, if you hear me say ministry, to something that is Protestant or Catholic. The word ministry just means to serve. And ultimately, that's what this is about. And by titling it correctly, it also helps myself and everyone else who is involved, as there are many on the front end and on the back end who help to keep this thing going. It's more than just me. It's just more than just two. It's more than just three. There's a lot of people who have their hands in the mix, who are working to make things go correct. So we're all serving. At the beginning of the day, this is service. At the end of the day, this is service. And for what purpose? Because it's a part of the mission. And, that's a critical question to ask. When we're going forward and we want to do something in the world, a lot of times I know we ask the question why. And as I've said before, why leads to confusion. So sometimes the how and the what are a little easier to accomplish in terms of clarification, and then the why, it kind of just reveals itself, whether it reveals itself through dreams or reveals itself as a result of actually doing the work. But sometimes the why can be so broad because it changes. The why is elusive. Why am I doing this show this Sunday? Well, it's not for the same reason that I did it the first time, however many years ago. But I know Chief Speaks, I think this is our second year. But the reasons change, the why changes, but the mission has not changed. Waking people up so that way they can access the deeper dimensions of what they are and who they are, and giving them the keys to unlock themselves from this gilded prison that we call the greater society, or that we call even sometimes the matrix. So this experience and these teachings that I share, and many of which have been shared with me, really I could say all have been shared with me, because even those that were not shared by a physical source were certainly given via divine inspiration. And inspiration is never generated within the self, but rather is received. So any thought or idea that may come through, it came from somewhere. And so really being able to provide solutions to this game of life and helping people to escape the prison, some of their destructive thinking, has always been the mission. From every single exertion, from every single show, from every single retreat, from every single activity, every single mixtape, clothing, because at one point we had some t-shirts and stuff, and every single logo, every single color is about that mission, unlocking the deeper dimensions, the deeper inner dimensions of self, and really being able to scream to the oppressors with all honesty and sincerity, you can't control me. Ultimately you cannot control me. It's not going to work, because I now have tapped into the keys of true free will, so in reality, the mission has not changed. All right. So again, I want to just welcome you all. And, this month we started off with a bit of a freestyle, but, we were speaking about just some of the number value of the idea of 2017 and the number value of even the particular day that we broadcasted on last segment. And as always, I just kind of want to remind everyone that, breaking free, and I'm going to get into this in later shows, but really breaking free of the programming and the luminous matrix that we find ourselves in, which of course holds such richness and satisfaction for so many, which makes it very deep to unravel it around ourselves. But in order to really truly break free of that, there's so many different assumed and supposed paradigms that we also have to break free of in order to really begin to start to create and to envelop and even to tap into the primal source of light and energy once again, which every one of these awkward and unexplained social customs carry and pull us further away from. You see, so the rediscovery of ourselves is really going to take some heavy and serious shifting, and so when we speak about things like the New Year's, and one thing I have to say is that, I received several New Year's wishes and things like that from different people, and I am definitely grateful. So, I don't want it to seem as though, I'm someone who walks around with a frown on my face, and when someone says Happy New Year, I have nothing positive to say in response, because there are different levels that we can enjoy our life on, different levels that you can enjoy the spirit, and in many instances, it's important to be able to join with people and celebrate certain things if it's acceptable to your spirit or acceptable to your vibration. And it's not all festivals are bad festivals. You see, not all intentions are bad. I tell you something that works that a lot of people don't know. When you're going through something and you really need some help and you have people around you who are concerned for you, ask them to pray for you if they're praying people. And the more people you have praying for you, the more ray of fortune you will see in your life. I'm telling you, it works. Now, it may seem, but yeah, that's a paradigm. Who are they praying to? They praying to Jesus. There's no J's in Hebrew language. His name wasn't Jesus. This, that. We can go through all of that, but there's a certain energy that's generated just through the positivity and the expected searching that comes on, that activates when a person is praying. Not only that typically when a person is praying, they're tapping into a different dimension of isolation that they normally do not traverse through in their quote unquote secular life. So when you ask someone to pray for you, they begin to loose the grip of societal dimensions. Even if they're praying or tapping into one of their programmings, it still loosens the grip of certain things and allows for a more powerful self to rise up. Now, am I advocating religion and prayer? No, not at all. Not at all. But there's steps to things. Just like I would never advocate really the ingestion of soy-based products or, processed quote unquote vegetarian food, but it certainly is a step for some if you are in the habit of consuming poor quality meats. and you want to make the transition to, a plant-based eating regimen, then yeah, it is a step, and you may find yourself doing a little better on it. But is it harming you? Absolutely. Yeah, your body thinks it's chewing on rubber bands, seasoned rubber bands. Doesn't even really see it as food. But nonetheless, so I'm not totally disregarding the value of some of these customs, and even some of the peacefulness that it can bring when people are sending those good vibrations toward you. But in the same instance, and I know it's not for everyone because it's such a hard thing, if you really want to get free and you really want to see things in a healthier and better sense, you're going to have to give up more than you might ever imagine. And a lot of times what we're doing is, we're maintaining one half of us is ascending. Let's say if we would look at the medium, if we looked at our belt line, right, which represents the medium, the halfway part between our lower selves and our higher selves. And sometimes the higher self is aiming and striving towards certain things, but we still give a lot of credit and value to the lower self, which still wants to tie itself into the concrete stone stabilization of unawakened culture. You see, so if there's no flow from top to bottom and bottom to top, then there's no flow of life and change. There's no awakenness that happens all throughout the body. So you really don't get to move into that higher or better space of consciousness. In fact, you move further into the stagnation of insanity, because you're basically pulling yourself apart. You're splitting yourself in half and attempting to serve two masters. And what happens is you'll end up loving one and hating the other. And you might hate the higher aspects of yourself, or you might hate the lower aspects. Just like now, you see there's been a certain measure of confusion. Let me turn off some of these bleeps and bloops. But there's been a certain measure of confusion in some of the conscious groups. And you've heard people say, this is why I don't even deal with consciousness. That's why I'm just walking away from it all, and I'm just doing my thing, and so forth and so on. Those are people who were invested in their consciousness through their lower animal half. You see, so it was all very imbalanced narcissism. It was all ego based. So when certain people said certain things that were bruising to the ego, or that were bruising to their idea of the structure that they wanted to maintain in a certain rhythm of participating in certain things. And when that was disrupted, they say, oh, see, now that's why I don't want to have anything to do with the whole thing. They want to throw everything out, because everything was based on their lower order thinking and not their higher order reasoning. The higher order reasoning, people are saying, good, get these clowns out of here. Because they understand that when you start to move to the higher realms of yourself, that the excess is going to fall. You can't avoid that. Just like if you were to climb up a mountain, I guarantee you, the higher you get, the more you're going to re-examine everything you brought with you. You might say, do I really need this many granola bars? And truth is, I don't even like granola bars. They're too starchy. So you might keep going. Do I need to carry, this much camping gear? Do I need all of these lighters? Can I just bring a couple of matches? Do I really need my cell phone? You start to strip things down. How many pairs of boots do I need to bring with me? And then you might say, well, I can leave some stuff at certain plateaus on this mountain, because as I go, the higher I go up, the more the terrain and the weather is going to change. The more it's going to test my ability and my willingness to destroy my dreams of presumptuous growth. And the more it's going to awaken my consciousness into the danger of bringing things into this sacred space that don't belong. You see? So when you start to raise that fire up inside of you, that power, that flame, what you start to do is that you'll see that the flame that's inside of you, the more authentic it is and the more fiery it burns, it begins to burn everything around you in a way that it brings a silent and peaceful isolation. That's why sometimes when you get higher into your consciousness, you look around, you find you don't have as many text messages on your phone, or as many IMs, or you don't have as many voicemails. Maybe your phone hasn't rung all day. No one's come looking for you, in days even, maybe, because you find that the more your fire raises up, the more you're burning the world around you. And as you begin to burn the world around you, your awakened consciousness begins to envelop your every environment. You see, now this, again, I want to reiterate, this is not the same as just being a jerk and your family not talking to you because you're rude, or because you lack social skills. There's a difference. A lot of times we hear that people call into the shows with that, and they say, well, my family doesn't really deal with me because they've always been jealous of my gifts and this and that. No one's really that special. You're not as special as you think you are, and no one's ever that jealous. If your gifts were at that level, you'd be doing something with them, and not just talking about how they cause you to be in isolation and things like that. One of the greatest gifts of the higher consciousness, and I've always spoken about that, I can always tell those who have tapped into the higher realms because they're the most polite. And I don't mean the false politeness. You could tell the fake stuff, but I mean they're just genuinely courteous and polite. You can't tell me that you've tapped into the higher realms of being and knowing, and your consciousness is alert and awakened, and you're rude and you're nasty, and you don't know how to relate to people. You don't know how to have a relationship, a relationship of equability. But everyone you relate to with, you're combative, or you're confrontative, or you're very defensive, or you're deflecting, or you're just rude and arrogant. You're operating from the lower half. There's no getting around that. And so that's something you have to kind of be aware of. Like I said, when you tap into the higher blooming of that fiery state, you begin to feel a certain inner gratefulness, and that inner gratefulness starts to imbue and envelop the existence around you. It starts to strengthen you, even in a way, because you begin to enjoy. Joy becomes indwelling. Joy is inside. You enjoy yourself, you enjoy others, you enjoy the world, you enjoy your love, you enjoy your pains, you enjoy all of it, because you have this blooming and this blossoming of this deep-seated fulfillment within you, despite what you're going through. That's what peace is. It's always being able to maintain your identity in the face of any form of confusion that affronts you, and that awakened and alerted consciousness. Like I said, what it begins to do is to burn away the deep-seated programming that exists inside of you. And when you have instances in your life where you're still saying, well, I'm having trouble getting rid of this or letting go of that, and you still feel the hand of the overlords. And the overlords of what? Your overlords are your culture. Your overlords are your religious leaders, your cultural leaders. Your overlords are your governmental leaders. Sometimes your family are your overlords. Sometimes the illusion of Maya is your overlord. So when you still feel that oppressive hand, it's because the fire inside of you is not strong enough. It's not powerful enough. So like, for instance, when you're dealing with the conscious sciences, I'm gonna tell you one thing that you may notice sometimes, which lends itself to reveal that a lot of times that lower order is still high functioning. So you're bringing a lot of dreams into your reality, and not a lot of visions are reshaping your reality. So what you find a lot of times is that there's still a strong degree of religious expectation and hopefulness, even messianic vibration within your consciousness. So sometimes, and you'll hear this on the show sometimes, people will say, well, if I do this, that, and that, they'll ask for ritual information. Will this happen? If I work with my ancestors, talk to them, do that, will this occur afterwards? You see, so in that idea, they're still worshiping, or they're still allowing a faceless system to lord over them, and they still have these heavenly expectations. It's no different than sitting in church and someone telling you, if you do this, do that, then you'll go to paradise or you'll go to heaven. You know, you'll be God's best friend and he won't let anything happen to you. If you do this, that, and the third, then everything will be good. Life will be great. You know, so it's always that cause and delayed effect, but the cause never really has to be indwelling, but it can just be a series of program and instructed waking scenario-based actions. And when you feed into that system where you've now deposited your scenario-based actions, regardless if you're moving, if you're dictating, if you're trotting like a slave that's feeding into that system, that particular system promises you heaven. And that's all you really care about, you know, despite how you get there. And what I mean by that, the system may tell you, give us 30% of your income, and you may need that 30% just to eat. But the system doesn't can care about your well-being in that sense. And then you begin to care less about your well-being and economic freedom because you have this promise on the back end. So that's when you'll get things where people will say things like, you know, well, I separate the message from the messenger. So I don't care if the messenger cares anything for me. I don't care if we've all already drawn that conclusion that this messenger is unhealthy for me. You know, I come into that space where I learn not to challenge authority. And this individual represents an agent or an authority of a system that's going to bring me heaven at some point. So like if I invest in my consciousness, then one day I'll be able to live on some land. And, you know, if I'm a man, I'll have 3-4 wives and a bunch of children. And somehow I won't really have to work hard to take care of them. And I'll be eating good organic food, but I won't really have to work hard to farm it, you know, and all my children will be homeschooled somehow, and there'll be no governmental interference, and, you know, all of these different things that really represent dreams, and they're matrix-based program dreams. There's nothing real about that. You see, and it's the same type of dream that you had when you were in the church and someone was told you that you were going to walk streets that were paved with gold, and there would be no more crying and no more sorrow, no more sadness anymore if you just got down on your knees and confessed this, or if you got down and you did this a certain amount of times per day, then this was going to happen for you later. Always that dream of this deferred heaven, you see, or like a deferred dream, you know, kind of like that raisin in the sun ideology. So what happens is now we come into the conscious groups with that same ideology of I do this, I do that, and then later I'm going to get this. And that is not working. So, you know, in 2016, there was a lot of mixing up and dethroning of certain individuals where they came into the light, and people were able to make a decision as to why they were really doing what they're doing. Are you in this because you have this messianic perspective and you're looking to totally invest in this Messiah? Or are you in this because, you know, you're looking again to tap into the deeper aspects of yourself? You know, if you're looking to really make daily choices that are free will choices that lead to more powerful realizations about this world that we live in, so that you can triumph over your overlords, you see. And whether those overlords be your pre-programming of the perspective of, you know, the Messiah, or your pre-programming of what your perspective is of heaven, because not to take away from any of those concepts, they're all real. But sometimes your pre-programming will take away from them, you see, for what they really are supposed to be for you. If heaven is now, if creation is now, then it's not about doing a couple things and sitting and waiting. It's about daily and momentary choices. Empowerment is right now in the moment. And the matrix, or the gilded cage that so many walk and exist through, is a combination of so many different things that you have to almost question your every thought. Your every movement. You have to question, how you're sitting, where you're sitting. I was talking to someone recently, a client, and he was sharing about, the difficulty that he was having with his family sitting around the table and eating a meal. And one of the things, he had just bought a new dining room table and everything. And I said, maybe you guys are not supposed to sit at a table. Try sitting on the floor. Maybe that's the way you're supposed to eat together. Just get some wooden mats and some big, nice wooden bowls and try to rock that for a minute. See what happens. And, it made sense to him based on some other things that we had discussed. But sometimes we're trying to force this matrix reality. And of course, there's a constant pressure to conform into it. So it's not that we just come up with it and it's so self-generating. But sometimes you have to look at, well, what aspects of the things that we're trying to force ourselves into are life-sucking? Even the things that we purchase, we get involved in, are they truly bringing life and bringing a deeper level of a living consciousness, or are they sucking the life out of us? Look at your vehicle, ask yourself that. Look at your home and ask yourself that. Look at your career, ask yourself that. The people you're in relationships with, sometimes the lack of purpose and mission can become life-sucking, because you really start to feel the reality of that slave life. Wow, I'm just walking every day and I'm going into a place, and this is a very emotionless process that I'm going through. But I don't think life is supposed to be as sterile as this. It's like all of my proper decision making has been eradicated and removed from my periphery, and I'm just going through certain emotions. And typically those emotions, certain emotions, not emotions. And those emotions are typically determined and compassed by our financial debt, our social pressures, our needs for deeper levels of consumerism, which dig us into deeper holes, but there are so many things there that just keep us on this treadmill where there becomes a very deep embedded sense of emptiness within all of us, right? And like I said, what you have to do in every moment is say, well, why am I doing? What am I doing? And is it bringing life or taking life? You see, I'm really just speaking about a change of paradigm for us to take on in 2017. I decided this month's topic is just going to be 2017. That's it. And then we'll get into our separate things, but just some of the things in this year that we need to look at and stop doing, some of the things that are not working. One of the reasons why I have switched up show formats several times is because, yes, I do sometimes tire of saying the same things, and my desire is not to be this great big motivational speaker or this world-renowned priest or radio show host or YouTube extraordinaire, content creator. So yes, I could figure out how to say the same thing 100 times. I could do it, and I've lived such a wild life that I have enough stories where I could, tell stories for 30 minutes and then give you 5 minutes of a message and you'd still feel like, wow, that was interesting. And I could probably keep that up for about 5-6 years, but that's not the mission. It never was the mission. The mission is about really opening up, again, the deeper levels. And that's my mission. You may have your own mission. Everybody has something that they've done, that they've come to do. And when you begin to boycott that, you start to reject your own freedom, and you begin to reject your own opportunities for freedom. And you create this ideology inside of your mind where now, even in your conscious excursions and your movements and trying to determine things, you lean more on the side of fate and less on the side of free will. you see, which now denies your entire journey, your entire purpose for even coming here and occupying this humanistic form. Okay, so I just really wanted to speak on some of the ideologies, and I'm gonna keep this show the length that it's supposed to be, because Chief Speaks is only supposed to be 30 minutes. And imagine that. I think last Strong Show was 2 hours and 20 minutes. Sometimes when I'm flowing, I just flow, and I could just go and go and go and go, and I have to stop myself. And that can be fun sometimes. It's important to still have fun in the things that you're doing. So even when I'm teaching, I still try to make the teaching experience fun, or the learning experience as fun as it can be. But at the same time, you have to be sure as to not overload people. And that's always a very important thing, not to overload people. But again, just speaking about the different spaces that we need to travel through in order to tap into our deeper selves, and some of the things that we really need to look at in terms of what may be keeping us from our higher levels of consciousness. What may be keeping us from really activating the principles of vibration, or activating the proper principles of causations, or the proper principles of correspondence, is extremely important, because we're collecting all this information and we're collecting all this knowledge, but until we apply it, we won't see freedom. You see, you can have a lot of dead information inside of you, but applied knowledge is power and freedom. So to really tap into those fundamental realities and really start to be able to inseminate the womb of the universe, and even the womb of your own mind, you have to have an alignment between upper and lower. Like we say, as above, so below. And if you're still moving, it's like if your legs are just doing things robotically and your mind is somewhere else, you do nothing but create a grid of sickness. You see, so if you're saying, yeah, but my lower order tells me I have to go to work every day, I have to do this, I have to marry this way, I have to have a relationship this way, I gotta da, and you're just moving through things robotically, then you don't really get to tap into, again, the higher aspects of your path. One thing that you begin to learn the more you tap into things is that there is no one way of doing things, and more importantly, there is no one correct way of doing things. So however you have to free yourself up, however you have to get loose and uncover your character is fine. And I think about that, as I'm speaking, I'm just kind of referencing sometimes some comments I see, or the people, especially when I speak about Orisha sciences and just different indigenous sciences, and they say, oh, you're supposed to do it this way, you're supposed to do it that way. Again, it's the religious conservatism and the religious devotion and dogma to a faceless system. I can't tell you how many times people have tried to tell me how things should be done in African systems, people who've never actually even been to Africa, who've never got on a plane, who've never stepped foot on the soil. I've had people try to tell me how things should be, and they've never even left the North American continent. They don't even have a passport. I could giggle at it. It's almost, it's kind of funny, but it's sad at the same time, because there's that insanity. You see, a lot of times insanity is so close to us and we don't even recognize it when we see it. We're just so used to people making programmed choices on a daily that are based on an insane system, that when someone does something that's actually reflective of their freedom, we don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to respond, and sometimes the agent comes out in you, you're taken over by, your overlord, because the overlord has the power and the ability to possess whoever they want at any moment. And sometimes we think that's a good thing. We say, oh, I got possessed. By what? So always be careful when you talk about who you're a son of or who you're a daughter of. I'm a son of this energy, I'm a son of that. You can say I'm a son of Shango, and then I say, what do you know about Shango? Oh, well, Shango's king of lightning. Okay, cool. What does Shango's name mean? What does that word mean? Shango. What's that word? I don't know. Okay. How does Shango appear when Shango first appeared on the planet? I don't know. What is lightning? I don't know. What was the kingdom that was said that Shango ruled? I don't know. Okay. Who was Shango's relatives? I don't know. Children? I don't know. You see? So now you're worshiping a faceless God again, a faceless system. You are being controlled by the overlord. Doesn't matter if you don't think Jesus doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter if you think Islam is a very new religion and it came out of Africa. It doesn't matter if you believe that the real Hebrews came, were taken into bondage by the Egyptians, and Israel is the Holy Land. Doesn't matter if you've broken the chains of those things. If you still have this undying devotion to faceless systems, and you pride yourself in saying things like the universe or higher power or the supreme being, and you pride yourself because it catapults you and your statements into a place of irrefutable ambiguity, then you are still in the matrix. You're still being controlled by the overlord, and at any moment they can jump into you and control your behavior and your actions. You see it all the time. You can see it with the recent little e-scuffle that happened or happens in the conscious groups. Everything is higher power until there's a disagreement. You see, then all of the programming comes out, and it's N-word this and F-you this and you are this, that. You see the overlords take them right over. The overlords jump right back into them because they never exiled the overlords from out of their system. They never exiled the culture from out of their system. They never exiled the foreign gods from out of their system. And in some instances, you find that for some, it becomes even vogue to be able to have bits of consciousness while at the same time holding on to bits of very destructive behavior at the same time, almost as if it's cute. You see, and you begin to see the result of it. So when your fire is actually pure, when you have a pure fire and burning inside of you for the growth and the learning and the unconditional service to the world, that fire begins to burn the world all around you, or really your perception of reality. Let me put it that way. It begins to burn your perceptual, realistic view of what the world is. It burns it up all around you. Everything comes into question. You say, oh, well, I'm going to start to eat healthy. For lunch, I'm going to have a fruit salad. I'm not going to, go and get a hamburger or something. And as you're eating the fruit salad, you'll look down and say, wait, where's the seeds? Oh, man. You look at the container. What kind of plastic is this? Oh, man. And you look at the fruit again and say, who washed this fruit? And what kind of knife did they use to cut it? Knife might have parasites on it. You see, everything starts to get burnt away, and you start to look at the spirit and the soul of things. You look at the individuals who are in your cipher, in your circle, and you start to look at their soul and you say, what are you really? And what are you in relationship to my mission? What is my mission? What am I here to do? What am I here to represent? All of those things start to come into question. You look down at your own clothing and you might say, well, what does this represent? What is the statement here? And you start to move further away from questions like, why? The whys. Why was I ever born? Why was I given life? You start from where you're at and you go forward. You say, well, what's my mission? What am I here to share? You see? And that starts to bring a certain level of excitability into your thinking, you see, because then you start to look at the tools around you. Like I said, when you climb in that mountain and you determine and you say, what do I need from what I don't need? How much baggage am I carrying here thinking that this was something that I was going to need at some point that I'm never going to need, because it has nothing to do with my mission. I was in my kitchen earlier, looking for a remote. I was giving somebody a old, it's like a, you know those old, when DVDs came out, everyone was trying to convert their VHSs over to DVD. Well, I have one of those machines. You can play the VHS on one side and it burns it to a DVD on the other. And I had it like sitting in a box for like 6-7 years now. And I remembered I had it. Somebody had this old tape. I said, actually, I think I got something that could play that tape. Couldn't find a remote. But as I'm looking for the remote, I found cake design. The tube where you put the frosting in and squeeze it on the cake and you can spell something. What am I gonna use that for? I don't eat frosting. My family, we don't eat frosting. I don't even know how that got into my house. You see? So sometimes, you have all of this excess, and it might have been one of those purchases where, one of the sisters was in the store, was like, let me get this because we might need, Barbara's Earth Day's coming up. Maybe it could have been something like that. I don't know, but they don't put none of that crap on anything. I'm not eating that, So sometimes we gather things and we become very hoardish in our gathering of resources without being really clear on the tools that we can actually use and the tools that we really need in order to deliver our message. You see, and a lot of times, again, that's because the overlords are still pounding their message into us, and that's a message of consumerism and hoarding, because all it does is the clutter keeps you distracted from what you're really supposed to be doing. Sometimes it's good to starve yourself a little bit. It makes you meaner. It makes you more focused, and to have less. Sometimes we have too many choices, you see, and through all the choices, that's one of the things that was spoken about on the community show. I think it was either Thursday or Friday. We're talking about music, some of the challenges that they're having, in terms of relating to music and where's it going. And, music has become a very interactive experience now. It's not like how it used to be, years ago, when you listened to something, you went on a journey of that artist. And I mean, many years ago, whether it was cassette or you were listening via vinyl, an album, it wasn't always convenient to get up and lift the needle and skip to the next song all the time. So a lot of times projects were made with you sitting in one position, listening to one side in mind, you see. And even with tape, you sitting and listening because you had to fast forward and all of that. Then when CDs came out, it was like you could easily just skip to the next track, no problem, right? So it created a different creation experience. Now people didn't take you on a journey with their entire project. They just tried to get a single. So one song didn't have to be related to the last song, you see. So even in the same thing with our personal journey, sometimes one step is not related to the last step because we have so many options with each steps. And our profundity or preponderance of options creates more confusion than anything else. I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. What if you only had 2 things you could do? Sometimes we're overconfident and we think we can do more things than we really can do, or we really have the proven ability to do right now in this moment. But a lot of times it's the preponderance of options that causes the most confusion. Like I said, years ago, you had to sit down for a half an hour and listen to someone's project. You wasn't going to be, unless you was a DJ and you just going through song after song or song, but the average person wasn't doing that, So it made life a little bit simpler, even in terms of conscious information. We didn't have that much information years ago to tap into that. It just wasn't as much information to tap into. It wasn't as easy. You had to take more trips. Years ago, you would have to go to certain bookstores, and even then they may have to order books. You'd have to write your name on a little sticky somewhere, and you'd hope that they would remember to call you when a certain title came across or whatever like that. So because of the lack of options, a little bit of tools that you did get, you really dived into. You didn't play around with them. Before there was Amazon.com and you could just sit down and order a book from your phone And you may read it or you may not read it. Who knows? It was a different experience, you see. But your mission was more clear to you. And you knew that regardless if you were equipped with the knowledge to properly execute the mission or not, you were going to do it. You were going to start where you were and let the knowledge again become your understanding as you process through it, and let it slowly empower you to do more just from the doing, because you had less choices, you had less options. And now sometimes because of the preponderance of options, we now become paralyzed. I don't know what to do next. Well, what could you do next? About 30 or 40 different things. And that's why I don't know what to do next. You see, think about that the next time you get a reading and myself or someone you says, yeah, they're holding back, and you say, well, just tell me everything. And I say, no, it's just a distraction. I'm gonna tell you what's pertinent to your mission and what you need to do. Some people have an issue with that style of reading, but you know, my mission is not to be a reader either. So, you know, and as many of you know, when you're the paradigms of how we interact with people, even through commerce, a lot of times are wrong. We're told things like the customer's always right. That's hardly ever true. You know, that's why you look at some of the most refined companies that there are, they have the least amount of products that they sell. And notice the most lower end companies give you the most options. You know, you look at the Ford Model T. You know how many colors it came in when it first was created? 1, black. That's it. Everyone drove black cars. Look at old movies. All the cars are black. You know, and I mean, that's just one small example, of course. But even with higher end watch companies, the same thing. You don't have 500 models. You might have 3 models. You know, pick one. So sometimes the preponderance of options causes a certain paralyzation, and thinking that we need to have 1,000,001 options is a part of the Overlord matrix programming. And it removes the magic, because now we think the magic comes in how many possessions we have or how many special powers we have. And we don't understand that the magic comes in our ability to work the simple things, because ultimately that's what magic is. It's your ability to ride over top of the basic and simple rules, you know, and make things happen, which I'll get into. So the goal is to live with intent and not with programming, and not through higher level faceless architecture, but to actually live one where we have mission, we have personal priorities, we have personal motivation, you know, and we're not just a conglomerate, an organic combination of social architecting, consumerism, and spiritual plagiarism. All right, so that has been our Chief Speaks. All right, and we'll be back. I'll be back next strong, 11 a.m. Eastern. I know right now we have the Phase 1, our new spiritual training Phase 1 challenge going on. Join in if you're not a member of our new ministries and you'd like to become a part and be a part of the things that we are doing and have going on, and are slimming down this year and adding to this year, because there's always a refinement happening. Go to ournewlifeglobal.org, fill out the form, or you can also download the Anu Nation app. If you just go to like the Android store, type in Anu Nation, you'll find the app, and you can download that and get into that. For those of you who are looking to join classes, and let me give this as a note, because this has come up again today. I was giving some personal counseling to someone for free, right? Which is always a problem when someone doesn't bring a gift to the shrine and they're just giving counseling. It warps how they're supposed to be looking at things. And, you know, I was sharing a lot of things, and one of the things the person said was, I said, well, you know what? A lot of the questions you're asking that I've been helping you with for a while now, actually, are in my segments. Why don't you just start listening to my segments? And they kind of ignored this. I had to say it 3 times. And they said, okay, well, how do I find your segments? Where are they at? And I said, that's a very lazy question, which shows me that you really don't want to do anything. And they were like, yeah, that's true. You're right. So it's not the first time that happened. And I know some of you listening may think I'm talking about you because it's happened with you as well. So I am talking about you too. There have been too many of you have done that, who you find a way to get to me personally, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or something. You DM me, and then you say, oh, I really like what you're doing. I like your teachings. How do I sign up? How do I? Or some of you have expressed that you want to come study under me. I want you to teach me. It doesn't work like that. You have to go through a process. All right. And if you just want to lay back on your sofa and type something on your phone real quick, and thinking that a guru is going to show up at your at your doorstep, then you're not really built for this. Or you tell me, I've had people say, well, this is the way I learn. I like the one-on-one thing. I learn better that way. Why would I care how you learn? It doesn't matter to me. I don't think you're not the Messiah of anything. You ain't going to save anything. If you were, you wouldn't be so lazy, and you'd already be in the middle of your mission. You'd be doing something. And I may come to you and say, hey, let me help you to enhance what you're doing. You see, so if you're really a seeker, then you're going to seek, and you're going to show some initiative, and you're not going to ask lazy questions like, where do I sign up for the class? People who ask questions like that, they don't really do much, because it's so easy. It's in the description of every single show we do. It's usually, even if you look at the little slideshows, it's always there, even when it's not a slideshow. And you see video of me talking, or Sister Kim, there's always some type of link in there where to sign up for the classes. Why? Only because the question gets asked so many times. But then you always hear us say Sadulu House, Sadulu House. Why don't you go on Google and search Sadulu House? So if you don't want to do any of that, then you're not really going to do anything else, because you're locked into the matrix of how you receive things. Just like people will say, well, I learn best this way. You don't know how you learn best, because if you learned best, we wouldn't even be talking, because you'd already have your mind, and you wouldn't need to seek in the class. It would be given to someone else, or in the lecture, or in the workshop that I'm currently doing here or there or whatever. You haven't learned anything yet. That's the problem. So you're here, you realize that, and now you're saying, okay, it's time for me to start learning, time for me to start doing, time for me to get on my mission. So that means you're going to have to give up and abandon the some of the old paradigms of how you've done things. And I never tell you have to abandon everything you come with, or you have to throw out everything you come with, but you may have to abandon. You may have to re-examine and say, has this truly, honestly worked for me? And if it hasn't yielded the results that I've looked for in life, then I need to question it. If it has yielded the results that I've looked for in life, then my next step after that is to examine what I have looked for in life and why, and who told me to look for that. You see, so it's a constant seeking and unveiling and unwrapping until you get to that core divine spark that I spoke about in the last segment. But in any event, like I said, that has been this Sunday's Chief Speaks. And I want to thank you all for listening. And hopefully I'll build with you soon. Remember, we have the community show now, All Strong. Currently, we're doing it from 1 to 3, but the times are going to change soon to accommodate different time zones and just different moments when people can call in and things like that. So the shows will be changing up a little bit. And, there'll be even more changes with this show on the way soon, or this series. I don't like to call it a show because I don't feel like I put on a show. I don't think I'm entertaining like that. Maybe with its live callers and I'm messing around with people. Sometimes I like to play with people and joke them out of their comfort zones, so that way they can be opened up. You find when people are laughing, they're vulnerable. Then you can teach them once they start laughing. So sometimes when I get callers, I'll start playing around and stuff like that. Or sometimes they're just playing around. So I choose not to give them my best self. But in any event, there's many changes coming along. So like I said, now is a good time to be a part of what Anu is doing, because it is historic. It is. This is a historic movement. And the things that I'm seeing happen here and abroad are very beautiful. There's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work. I think we make it look smooth. But it's a lot of work. I'll give you an example. For the past 2-3 days, no, I think 3 days, I've been on Skype and WhatsApp with my team over in West Africa. And so much just, I don't want to say drama, but yeah, village politics, we'll put it that way. Just a lot of village politics, having to mediate and deal with long distance and perform my duties as chief, and do that via Skype and WhatsApp. Sometimes it's very difficult, especially when sometimes certain elements are brought into certain environments, or character is questionable. It's dealing with thwarted character is a much different experience outside of the U.S., than it is here. Sometimes we expect people to be foul, and it helps to confirm what we desire and what we want. But in other spaces, sometimes it's a huge shock, and it takes a long time for a wicked person to be recognized, because people just don't believe it. So yeah, this is not an easy task, but it is certainly a beautiful mission. Certainly a beautiful mission. So if you'd like to be a part of this mission, certainly sign up. And on your membership form, just click off what ministry, if any, that you'd like to be a part of. All right. And remember, in order to fully work with any of our ministries, you have to complete phase 1 of the training. So there is something required of you. All right. Until such time, this has been Chief Yuya on Chief Speaks. Peace.